This is EmergencyFD Storyline.
You know, there was a time when especially being a woman, I really was never really comfortable talking about the fire station because I was already worried that they saw me
As
weaker.
Yeah.
And wow, if I was emotional about something.
Being a first, one who breaks new ground.
I knew that we were being watched. Being one of the first women, I heard people talking, in the background and people watching. And so it was still a little unusual for people to see us on the scene, not only just for the firefighters in general, but for the public. And when the thing that the public saw was a firefighter, and that's what they saw then. That's it should be what they see and expect now.
Being a first is one thing, but working the job and rising through the ranks while being a first is another. That's our storyline. The views expressed on this program are from the guest and the host and do not necessarily represent the views of any government agency, private company, or public service. EmergencyFD Storyline's focus is to tell the stories of those in the fire service and to highlight what matters to our first responders. I'm your host, Tom Mann. My guest today is someone I've seen work the job from the start. As a fire private, driver, lieutenant, battalion chief, division chief on the command staff, and now the director of the fire services for the city of Memphis. She was someone who I recall as quiet, reserved, at least around me. She did her best to try to avoid my camera during the 10 years I documented the Memphis Fire Department. She weathered some tough times, and as she rose in rank, she began to stand out. I recall during a training drill for weapons of mass destruction, I recorded a young Lieutenant Gina Sweat protect her team from being contaminated by a potential chemical agent. She did very well, while her other seasoned male counterparts didn't have such a positive outcome. 20 years ago, that training exercise left a positive impression with me about the potential of the rookie female lieutenant. She is a first, and now the first female director of the fire services in Memphis. Recently, I had a chance to sit down with the leader of the fire department, Director Gina Sweat, and this is part one of a two-part interview.
So it's been more than 25 years ago. I remember being on the scene of a particular fire at a Walmart. There was a young lady firefighter giving rides to the media, and at first I didn't realize it was a young lady. I just knew there was a firefighter allowing me to go up inside of a basket and get some shots of the scene of the devastation of this very large fire that had taken place at a very, very big retail outlet, which was a Walmart at the time. And that particular person is the one that's with me now, which is Gina Sweat, who's now the director of the fire services of the Memphis Fire Department. And that was a very long time ago, right?
Right, yeah, thanks for dating me there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
I remember that young lady too, and giving those. And at that time, that was the biggest fire I had ever seen myself. It was quite a scene there just to really just soak all that in and understand the significance of it, and then to have, being the person to give rides up and down. And
Sure, you were going, great. These are the media people. What in the world's going to happen?
yeah, I just kept my mouth shut back then. I knew, that was my job, was to give rides, not to give comment on what had happened.
Back in that day, I can't count on my hands on the fire suppression side women in the City of Memphis Fire Department, and there were just very few, and you were one of them.
That's right. Yeah, at that point, when I was hired, there was another female hired in my class, and I think we were like the fourth and fifth female hired for firefighting position at that time. So it was still a little unusual for people to see us on the scene, not only just for the firefighters in general, but for the public. And the thing that the public saw was a firefighter, and that's what they saw then. That's, it should be what they see and expect now, is a firefighter that shows up that's qualified to do the job, well-trained, and is going to take care of their business. So that's what I try to stress. That's what I always tried to do, provide when I was out in the field. It worked out pretty good that way.
And you did that. And I've talked with people today, and those younger ones, my own son's on, and I've told the history. I said, she rose through the ranks. Gina, I can tell you about Gina Sweat. Here's what she did. I witnessed that. So tell me a little bit about what company did you start off and then you wound up.
So I started off, I was on Snorkel 2.
Yeah.
The big, that was the big, we called it the Beast back then. It was
Yeah.
the 85-foot snorkel. And it was pretty dated when I got on it. So it was, I'd never driven anything that big, and I wasn't there long before my lieutenant says, come on, we're going driving. What I didn't realize, he meant I was going to go driving. It scared me to death. My first lieutenant got me off on the right track. He believed in training. He believed in doing what we were supposed to do and taking care of our business. And so he really got me on the right track. I've always been pretty self-motivated. I knew that we were being watched, being one of the first women. I heard people talking, in the background and people watching. And so I always had this strong desire to prove myself, to prove myself that I could do the job. And I felt like it was my responsibility to hold my end of the bargain up that I'd signed on for. I guess coming up playing sports when I was, going through high school and college, I'd always been a member of a team. And I remember the first day of fire school, everything you do with a partner, you do with as part of a team. What I learned from sports that I brought into this world, which is now it's a matter of life and death, the team you have around you. I may not have always been the strongest person in the room, but I may have been the fastest, or may have not been the smartest, but, I worked hard, or maybe, all of those things. My philosophy has always been what can I contribute to this team to make it better? And I think I've done that over the career, and I think that's how I ended up in this position today. That's something I really believed in. Even today, I had the same philosophy with Mayor Strickland when he gave me this job. My mom told him at the ceremony that night that, I don't know about the rest of your team, but I promise you'll never be sorry about Gina, because she knows that I've always been a hard worker. And, my heart is just, whatever team I'm on, I'm going to be a team player, and I'm going to try my best to be the best on that team.
One fire, I'd captured some video of you lieutenant.
Yeah, that's still floating around, by the way.
It is.
Some of these young guys, it really just amazes them that I actually...
You actually did that.
Yeah, I actually did that.
That same lieutenant mentioned about you that she pays attention and she's listening. She's learning and she's very inquisitive. She is very adaptable, and she does what we tell her to do. She does it. She does her stuff. I know you became a driver. You went each of those steps. Were you one of the first lieutenants, female lieutenants, or were you one of two or three, I think, that had been at that time?
Yeah, so Chief Lloyd, Hope Lloyd,
Yeah.
I believe she was the first female lieutenant, and then...
And I worked with her at the training academy.
Yeah, so I came after her. So our careers we've closely mirrored each other's career. And not only that, we've been best friends.
Yeah.
We were best friends before I got on the job. We were good friends then.
Wow, I didn't know
And so
that.
our friendship has really transcended the fire department way before then. So we've worked together and supported each other all along the way. Some people would try to put us kind of against each other, but we never let that affect our friendship. We actually let that kind of drive us to push each other to be better. I'm definitely better just because, she's my friend and that we work together. She's very well respected. I think if you ask in the field, she was one that did it right, and was very physically capable of doing the job. And she's smart too, so she was just the whole package.
She was at the training academy. I've forgotten. There was a couple of the new recruits were talking about her, and I noticed that they were scared to death of her. Oh, Lloyd? And they're like, oh, yeah, man, she can really rip into you if you're not doing it right. I think the first time I saw you as a lieutenant, there was a weapons of mass destruction drill. The first companies that came in, there were these guys that were seasoned lieutenants, had been on the job for 20-plus years, knew their stuff. They were coming in, and every one of them were doing it wrong. They would show up, and the next thing you know, their crew was all contaminated, and they were being told, okay, you're dead, you're this, you're that. And then all of a sudden, here she was. I saw you pull up with your crew, and I watched you. I was looking at your face, and I remember I actually turned my camera, and I'm like, I'm going to follow and see what she does. And you were trying to be sure that nobody was touching your guys. You were keeping everybody back. You were assessing the situation. The companies that were coming in after you, they were following what you were doing. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was an interesting. So when you're the one who's different, and I guess in this situation, I was the girl, but it's no different than a lot of other anyone who's not like the other people on their team or in the group goes through the same things I went through. It was just that I was different because I was a girl. But I took my job very serious, and that was a drill But I was determined that my firefighters, my team, my company, we were not going to get contaminated. So it's interesting because I think the chief came up after that because we actually used our tools to keep people at bay. We used pike poles to make sure that, to have a separation between us and the people that were trying to contaminate us. And when he came and asked me, I thought I was going to get in trouble.
That's a first response, isn't it?
The first response was, I think his question was, who told you to do that? And I'm like, oh boy, here it goes. I'm fixing to get in trouble. And then, there were some kudos for not getting our team contaminated. So that was.
And there was, I heard the discussion back at the training academy, and they were like, did you see? And they were talking about Lieutenant Sweat, she did this, and this, and there was discussions about it. And I heard those. It was around some command staff. I remember that. I remember that back in the day.
Well, that's good. So I didn't get in trouble that time. There's a few other times that maybe I did get in trouble. But I always took taking care of my team serious. And even though we all knew that was a drill, but, I believe I've, practice, play like you practice. If you practice doing it right, then when the real time comes, you'll do it right.
And I know that was challenging for the women coming on now. It is easier than it was, but I know there's a lot of things that they have to overcome many times.
The job here in Memphis it's not easy. We're dual role firefighters and EMS responders. So you really have to be good at two completely different things. Firefighting is one thing. It's a lot more physical. The EMS, you have to know a lot more about medicine and how to treat whatever emergency you come on, and just dealing with the medicines and the equipment's, fancier and everything. So it's two different specialties, so you kind of have to be able to merge those together. It's like I go back before, you just have to find out where you fit into that mix. Being a firefighter is not for every woman.
And it's not for every man.
And it's not for every man
Not
either.
every man can do the job, nor can every woman.
Either physically or mentally. So there's two different, so you got your emotional, as well. And everybody's not emotionally fit to do this job, and they may be physically fit. And just because you're muscled up, you may not have the cardiovascular, so there's so much that goes, it's very complicated to get that perfect mix where you're great at everything. So I think that's where it's even more important for those frontline lieutenants and the battalion chiefs in the field and division chiefs to really learn their teams, learn, who's good at what, and make sure you set them up for success. And, I would hope that all of them are looking out for the safety of their personnel like I tried to do.
Being a firefighter is a firefighter. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, and that's really the truth of it.
Right. I say being a firefighter is not something you do, it's something you become.
Right. That's
So
really true.
it's a lifestyle. You think about it, we spend a third of our life in the fire station. Probably spend hour for hour, probably more time with our fire department family than we do our real family, because when you're off, they're not always off; they're working jobs. So it gets to be a really close-knit group, and so you get all those same, the same things that any family has. You have your little arguments and different things that, things that go good. We play together, work together, eat together. It is really like a lifestyle, and if you haven't been a part of that, it's really hard to understand.
You're listening to EmergencyFD Storyline. Our story will continue in a moment. If you would like to find out more about Director Gina Sweat, check out a video I put together on our website called Being a First. You'll find it on EmergencyFD.com, our website, under the video tab. That's www.emergencyfd.com. Look for the title, Being a First, in the video tab. Now we continue with part one of my interview with Memphis Fire Director Gina Sweat.
So you got another family, and they're a bunch of guys.
Uh-huh.
I guess what are some of your memories, or what just different things that you were part of that team, you were part of that group, and you are.
I played hard right with them. So, I guess when I first came home, it was a while before I thought, wow, this is the nicest bunch of guys I've ever been around, because apparently someone had talked to them. really talked to them before I got there. So I think I may have been the first one that let a bad word pop out, and it was on after that. But I guess you just have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
People go about things different ways. The way I handled it was I didn't expect men not to be men.
Yeah.
And like you said, when you're living 24 hours a day, I know more about men now than I ever dreamed I would know.
Probably wanted to know.
Way more than I wanted to know. And we had a lot of really interesting conversations around the kitchen table, but I never let it offend me. I always was, I'm an open book. They could ask me questions, and we would talk about a lot of different things. But I did have my limits, and I would set those boundaries for the most part and let guys know you've gone too far, let's stop. And I think if you do that, in any relationship, but set those boundaries and then just be willing to say, okay, this has gone far enough. But I couldn't I couldn't go over my own boundary either, so I had to kind of walk the same walk. Like I said, living in a fire station is a completely different lifestyle than most people ever could imagine. And I think it has changed. For instance, when I came on, we had open bed hall, and there was no female. There was no female separate bathrooms in the station. So I'd have to make an announcement when I was going to go upstairs and take a shower. If there's anybody upstairs, they'd have to go. It was a big mess. And over the years, there's been some attempts at getting gender separation in all the fire stations. It's not perfect now, but believe it or not, up to 4 years ago, we still didn't have gender separation in the bed halls. And by the end of this year, we'll have at least separation where you can have a little privacy in your sleeping quarters. I've been on the job 28 years. So, and what's interesting about it, I think the men appreciate it as much as the women. They
really do.
They just never would say anything before.
Yeah.
and so, now I think they appreciate it. But those are the kind of things that, we try to do, is make the living situations, do little things we can to improve the fire stations for where they're living.
It was just a big open place. Didn't matter who came in, but everybody was there. And
I could have took offense at a lot of things over the years, and people could probably take some offense with some of the things I've said and done over the years as well. But you just, pick battles worth fighting and worth winning.
What do you challenge young women that are wanting to go into fire service, or they're wanting to be a part of it? The job is unique. You're away from your family, constantly on an adrenaline rush, and then it's very down. There are moments that are terrifying. There are other moments that are probably like being in junior high. What would you tell them to do and how to go about it?
Oh, I would tell them the same thing I would tell any young man wanting to go into this profession. You need to get your education. You need to learn to read, math, and talking to people. Those are three things that no matter what job you get in your life that you've got to do. Some basic math, reading, and learning how to talk to people. And so that's the first thing I would say. And then I would say find somebody that's doing the job and talk to them. Find out before you take a deep dive. If this is really something that you think you want to do, we're happy to give tours of the fire station or do anything like that. And if you're really interested, contact us, let us know. And we have a recruiting program where we got a lot of great young, both male and female firefighters and paramedics who are eager to help young people find their path to the fire department. And we're opening doors, different avenues to do that now. So I would say find someone that's doing the job. Find out for sure if this is what you want to do, and then talk to people.
Okay, you're one of firsts, and one of those is the fact that you're, I guess, the first female to be the director of the City of Memphis Fire Department. When I look at the role, look at you in this role, it's totally been earned. You've gone through the ranks, you've worked this job, you've understood this job. Now you're director, so leadership is different than being in the rank and file. Being at the top, what is the difference and the biggest challenges you've had to experience?
One of the unfortunate things I really learned throughout my career is everybody's not going to be happy about your promotion for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Maybe it was something they wanted. Maybe I'm making decisions they don't like. So everybody's not always going to be happy about my success because of their own personal reasons. That's okay. Learning to be okay with that and not take it personal. I've tried really hard not to change as a person as I've progressed, but your perspective changes and your responsibility changes, so you have to do things sometimes a little different. Along the way, I've tried to always be the person I would hope my supervisor would want working for them. So that's kind of what I expect of my people now. So leading is different than managing. in the firefighting world, I kind of describe it like you manage fire scenes, you manage incidents, you manage things, you manage budgets. You try to lead people. So I try to meet people at a place where we can mutually understand each other and have mutual respect. Try to figure out what motivates them, why they're here. You try not to get too deep into their personal business, but is there other things going on in their life that affects, how they're performing at work? And you have to spend a lot of time getting to know people. And, for the people that I manage directly or lead directly, that takes a lot of effort and time to try to do that. And then you have to do things for the right reason. You have to try to hold people accountable. That's always difficult. Try to be consistent. Always lead with that kind of consistency and treat people fairly the way that they need to be led. You don't treat everybody the same. And that's something I kind of had to learn along the way too. And being a leader, you also have to be vulnerable. I have to be willing to open up and share my story. We've talked about it. I was at 750 Adams. I was at the dollar store fire. I've been on some other scenes. To be able to share those stories with other people and let them understand that I've been there when things went really, really bad, and I hope and pray that nobody ever has to go through those feelings. That's in my mind every day, because now that when you're the director of the department, ultimately all that is my responsibility. So that weighs on me a lot, and I try to, make sure that they have the tools they need to do their job properly, make sure they're trained properly, and we, try to instill a good attitude and make sure that they're serving the citizens the way they're supposed to. Like I said, it's a slippery slope trying to hold people accountable and in a way that they know that you're doing it for their own good. Much like on the scenes when I was a battalion chief. Firefighters, you filmed a lot of fires in your day. They never want to come out. They always think that they're going to put the fire out. But sometimes you have to care more about them than they do themselves at that moment, and you know you're coming out now. So it's the same philosophy. You really just have to find ways to show them you care, and some people are going to get it, and then no matter what you do, some people are not going to get it. I've learned a lot, as a leader. I've learned that people will want and expect a lot of their leadership, and I try to do the same thing I've always done. I work really hard to do my job well.
It's lonely at the top, I think. It is that balance. I really respect you for that. Starting from the ground up and having to work really hard to get where you are, you've been where they are. You know what it's like to be the one where somebody's dumping on you about something. How has that really helped you in your role now as you look back?
I think it helped me tremendously coming up through the ranks and hitting those different levels. Like I said, we have a lot of young people that maybe never worked with me on a fire scene or anything, so they're going by what they've heard, whether good or bad. But I have been there and done that. I've been in some really tough situations and had to make some really tough decisions, and because of that, I think that probably helped me more than it hurt me. I remember a lot of the bad stuff. Some of that stuff stays with you forever, but it also has caused me to be more driven to try to make sure that things like that don't happen again, that they have. It's my responsibility now to make sure they're well equipped, and we have new SCBA now, and they have every firefighter has a thermal imaging camera it's a part of their SCBA. So we did that because that's for the firefighter safety, but because I've been involved in some fires where people got lost and they lost their lives because they couldn't find their way out. When I had an opportunity to provide that one tool, we took the shot, and we were able to provide that to all the firefighters. We were the biggest fire department in the country to be able to put a thermal imaging camera in every firefighter's hand. I'm really proud of that because it's keeping them safer. Maybe they don't always understand that that's why I'm making these decisions, but I think my experience in the field, some of the really bad situations I was a part of earlier in my career, drives me to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
I know you're very concerned about cancer, PTSD, which we'll get into. Those are passions for you as well. You've experienced some of these things, and then people that have been deeply involved and have dealt with cancer, that have had to deal with these tragic situations on the job.
When I first came on, we went to the full bunker gear. They were just coming out of the hip boots, and we all had an air pack that we shared. We had to wash it every day. So I felt like a dinosaur almost because, talk about, back when I had to feed the horses. But
and rode on their E.H. Crump, that kind of thing.
Right,
yeah.
But we've made a lot of improvements to their safety equipment and everything. The cancer is real. I mean, we've lost firefighters because of cancer, whether it was occupational or not. One of the firefighters was on my company, Brian Green. His was likely not job-related, but he died of stomach cancer. if that's something we can avoid, it's one thing, if you get caught up in a bad situation at a fire and everything has been done properly, and bad things do happen sometimes. But some of these exposures we can avoid, or we can at least reduce their exposure to the carcinogens. And that's why we're working on the care and maintenance program and washing turnouts and providing hoods, and we fix the exhaust systems. We're moving ice machines off of apparatus floors where they were literally having exhaust fumes in their ice that they were putting in their glasses, and just a lot of things that we're doing differently to help the firefighters help themselves. So there's a lot of things we're doing. I hope that they're paying attention and doing the proper decon on the scenes and stuff all of the stuff we're putting out. Because we're doing it for them. We're doing it so that they don't get expose themselves to carcinogens, and please don't take it home to your family, because they didn't ask to be a firefighter. They didn't ask to be exposed to this stuff. There's a lot of information out there that shows that people think they've cleaned their gear, and they take it home and they're exposing their young kid to stuff like that. So I think what we're doing is saving lives. We may never know the direct impact of it, but I know that we're headed in the right direction. Just giving them the tools and stuff to do that kind of decon that they need to do, and to reduce their exposures. So I'm pretty proud of that work. And we did. The state passed, where certain cancers were deemed job related. I went to the mayor, and the city's covering more.
I think the state did 4,
yes,
and then the city's doing almost 10.
Yes, we're covering the rest of them that most departments are saying are occupationally related. So the city's going above and beyond to cover these type of cancers if one of our members gets it. So I think I'm really proud of those things, because it is about taking care of the firefighters. We're looking at mental wellness, which is hugely complicated for the alpha-type personalities that get involved in the fire and police service. I have a lot of conversations with my counterpart in police. You got all these very strong-willed personalities that are very dominant and very,
You can't tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to take charge.
We feel like we're, in just like
Superman,
Superwoman, Wonder Woman, all of these things, and we're really not.
Yeah.
All of us have a breaking point. We're doing some things. We've got therapy dog program we just started. We're doing the critical incident debriefing program. We're trying to boost that, make it a little better. We're looking at ways to try to help the firefighters if they want to help themselves. You can send a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So we can get you the resources, get the firefighters the resources they need. And I can sit you in a room with a counselor, but if you don't really want to, get better, then it makes it a little harder. I think there's more resources available now than there ever has been if they really want to take advantage of it.
That's our storyline, and part 1 of my interview with Memphis Fire Director Gina Sweat. Be sure not to miss part 2 on our next podcast. You've been listening to EmergencyFD Storyline. If you would like to contact EmergencyFD Storyline with comments or to suggest a story or subject for an upcoming podcast, email us at storyline@emergencyfd.com. Once again, that email address, storyline@emergencyfd.com. And don't forget to check out a video called Being a First on our website. That's at emergencyfd.com. Look for it under the video tab on our website. I'm Tom Mann, and I want to thank you for listening and encourage you to join me next time as we continue with part 2 of our interview with Memphis Fire Director Gina Sweat.
Over my career, I've had to go, talk to some people a few times about some of the incidents I was involved in, because I didn't know if I wanted to come back to work or not.
There are many stories coming on EmergencyFD Storyline. Don't miss it.